Welcome ghosts and ghouls to another episode of Danica Raven's Bitesize Horror. Today we're going to be looking at a story called The Unforgiven Dead that was sent in to us by author Lorraine Montgomery. If you're sitting comfortably, we shall begin. A chill wind blew in from the west that night. On the westerly wind flew a swirling black mass. A murder of crows. Nessa ran. She knew what this was. She had heard this old tale many times before. Beware the crows that fly in from the west, for they are not real crows. What are they then? The most feared and dreaded of the Fae. Even death itself bows to them. They fly in at night on a westerly wind to reap the souls of the living. The sick and the dying are easier to take, but the happy and the healthy, now they have sweeter and better souls. She slowed. Her lungs burned and her legs refused to move anymore. Nessa willed herself to keep moving, but to no avail. She coughed and her lungs burned harder. She looked up, saw the mass of crows flying overhead. She gasped, changed direction, but so did the crows. There was only so much further she could run before her legs gave way, and she fell to the ground in a heap. Nessa gulped down large mouthfuls of air. The crows that had chased her this far began to circle around her. Nessa sat up on her knees and looked around wildly. She was completely surrounded. A small sob crawled into her throat. The largest crow landed in front of her. It hopped in place a few times and tilted its head as though examining her. Nessa gasped and trembled. She leaned back, her arms shaking as she moved. There are two ways you can summon them to you. One is by saying their true name aloud. The other is to have a heart mired in despair, loneliness, and desperation. The crows will come for those with sadness in their hearts. Please, she whispered, forgive me. There was a grotesque sounding crack and a crunch. In front of her, the crow had begun to transform. It shed its black feathers and its beak fell away from its face. It began to grow in size. Please, she sobbed louder, forgive me. But the crow did not hear her, and its grotesque transformation continued. If they do come for you, there is only one way to escape from them. Find a person with a stronger, healthier soul than yours. Sacrifice their life for yours. But even then, be wary. For if you do that, you might just belong with the monsters after all. As she watched, the crow in front of her had changed. She realised then why they had come for her. They'd been summoned by the emptiness that she'd felt in her heart, and on that fateful night when her sad heart had summoned the crows, she had given another's life for hers instead. The baby had smiled and giggled and laughed, and Nessa felt nothing when she gazed upon the child in her arms. She hadn't felt anything since the child had been born. It just smiled, oblivious to her lack of feelings towards it. She felt hopeless. She felt tired. She felt guilty. The child deserved better than her. She hadn't bonded with her child much either. Nessa had tried many times, but her heart, her spirit, just wasn't in the right place. Then one night, the crows had flown in from the west. With her child clinging to her chest, Nessa had watched from her bedroom window as they slowly circled, then descended, down towards her. A few had landed on her windowsill, and that was when she'd known then for what they truly were. They had come for her. She backed off to the opposite wall of the room. One by one, the crows had come into that room. They hopped across the floor towards her. Then she had made her decision. She left the room, and she left her baby behind. Tears fell from her eyes even back then. She knew the crows would return for her. She would never truly be able to escape from them. Leaving her child behind had only delayed the inevitable. The crow had finished transforming. Before stood a creature so ugly and horrible that Nessa didn't even know what to call it. You see, they go by many names. The Wild Hunt, the Underfolk. Most just call them the Unforgiven Dead. They have that name because they are the reaped souls of those who have committed unspeakable acts of evil when they were alive. They have no hope of redemption, so they are doomed to forever circle the skies and reap. So if you do sacrifice another to them, instead of accepting your fate, be warned, you'll end up joining them. The creature hobbled towards her, its knees bent backward like a dog's hind legs. Bony claws instead of hands and feet. Sharp teeth protruding from its beak-like mouth. But most noticeable of all were the two large, leathery wings wrapped around its shoulder like a cloak. About a foot away from Nessa, the creature before her stopped. It tilted its head in that crow-like manner and examined her again. Nessa could feel the tears falling, her lip trembling as the creature reached out one bony claw towards her. It touched her face, gripped tightly to her jaw. Its rancid claws dug so deep into her flesh that they drew blood. As for their true name, it's the Slough, said Nessa. That's your true name, isn't it? The Slough said nothing, but gave a bird-like shriek. Nessa screamed. Something wasn't right. It felt like her soul was being torn from her body. Nessa couldn't scream anymore, but the Slough had stood before her, continued to shriek. She rolled her head back. She had no more strength left in her, not even enough to cry. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. When Nessa finally opened her eyes again, she saw her own lifeless body staring back at her. Her body's mouth and eyes were wide open. Nessa looked down. She saw the black feathers and the crow-like feet. She saw the rest of the crows around her. Then they took flight, and Nessa joined them. If a murder of crows wasn't enough to give you the fear, why not stay tuned for next week's episode? Or send in a story of your own that you enjoy, perhaps we'll read it. If you enjoyed the show, why not like, comment and subscribe?